As he starts to break through this stuff, he does not understand the Bible as something that you're going to read as a prescription. And this will be the key, because of what he understands to be ad modum Aristotelis versus ad modum Scriptura. If you're trying to move from vice to virtue, and we'll go through this again. If you're trying to move from vice to virtue, from bad to better, let's just say from Sioux Falls to Rapid City, what do you need? A car, gas. What else do you need? A road. What else do you need? A map. Directions. If you're trying to bake a cake, what do you need? Recipe. So you're trying to take something and make it into something it's not. Right? That's kind of ad modum Aristotelis a little bit. Is moving you from something to something you're not. Right? So, how are you going to read the Bible when you're doing ad modum Aristotelis? I talk to my students this way. You're going to read it as a prescription, as a recipe of how to move yourself from vice to virtue. Go from worse to better. It's like when you're at the optometrist. Better or worse, better or worse, better or worse. That's going to be your constant question about yourself. Luther understands that's going on in your head. And what are you going to, if you're an honest broker about yourself, always going to say? Never better. Always worse. And this is what Luther's talking about. You're deluding yourself. So when it comes to thinking these through with the Scriptures, if you aren't thinking about the Bible as a prescription, there's another thing you're going to think about the Bible. And that is going to be as what I talk about, a depiction, or like a mirror. What do you do with the mirror? Will the mirror ever get you anywhere? What will the mirror do? Tell you who you are. That's going to be different. The reason this is important is because the idea of moving you from vice to virtue is everyone says, well, I'm a sinner and I need to get to heaven. All right? Which means I think I'm bad and I need to be good, like God. Now here's ad modum Scriptura. In the beginning, God starts to speak and he says, let there be light, and there is light. And God says, this is what? Good. And God creates humans. And then what does God say? They are very good. Now, if you think that you need to move from vice to virtue, what must you assume? You're not what? Which means you've already said Scripture isn't true. Luther understands that it's not about moving you from vice to virtue, but your sense of virtue, what you think is good, to faith, which is what Scripture calls you. What does Scripture call you when you're created? A creature. Good. See the difference from virtue to faith? So when you're looking in the mirror, can you tell the mirror what it thinks? Do you interpret the mirror? That's what telling the mirror what it thinks? No. It tells you who you are. So there's a whole different thing going on when you're dealing with the Bible and the issue of truth and all that kind of stuff. If you're going to work at it in the Western philosophical tradition, you're going to come at it with skeptic acid because you are going to think that you need to figure out the map, the recipe, how to make it happen. Now, the way I talk about this in medical terms is, if I were to go to an oncologist and I've been diagnosed with cancer, and I have one oncologist here and I have another oncologist here, and they both have a prescription of how they're going to get me out of this mess. And their intent, by the way, is for my betterment, right? And so their intent is not their own self-serving purpose. Agreed? They want to help me. Do you think those two oncologists who are interested in loving their neighbor as themselves, that's why they're doing this, are going to agree on the prescription. No, not necessarily. They might even argue over it. They might even get into a fight. If you understand the Bible as being prescriptive, guess what you're going to do? Fight over the prescription. If you understand it as something naming you, what do you need it for now? Tell you who you are. It's going to be your identity, your name tag. Very different way of understanding how the Bible functions. That's why in your Western philosophical mindset of scientific reasoning, discovering truth through your capacity to think is not ad modum scriptura. Because in that way, you would be taking everything and trying to get rid of all the untruths, and you'd be unpacking the Bible in a scientific way or in a historical way, in a different way of understanding things. So these are some of the factors that are going to go into this that help you understand, wow, Luther had a different way of thinking about it, a different breakthrough, and how all that played out.